Hey everybody, little soccer dad pod time. Got a heavyweight show here today. I'm rolling us in with a little bit of Bowie in honor of the name of the song is actually "Changes" by David Bowie. And in the world of youth soccer, like my radio voice, in the world of youth soccer, changes are the only thing that is constant, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go into the deep end of the top of the pile, the leagues, the alphabet leagues that everybody chases down and tries to figure it out. And joining me today, well, before I name names, just do your job, people. Like, review, follow, share. It's really easy. Quit stealing our content and not sharing it with others. Send it to a friend. Send it to you. And you know this parent. We all know this parent that is in the middle of the group that you really don't want to say hi to, but you got to say hi to. They need help. We're here to help them. Our show will kind of ease the tensions a little bit. All love to those parents, too, because they love their kids a lot. Without further ado, to discuss the changes in the MLS Next / ECNL / EA / you name it league, joining me today, my left to right, and since this is audio, that doesn't matter to you. I got Doogie, Coach Mr. Dan Donigan from STLDA, Mr. Matt Mueller from the Fusz, and Jeff Davis from SLSG. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now, a lot of people right now are like, wait a second. These clubs, they're supposed to hate each other. Are they? Is this a Zoom call, JB? No, it's not. I'll put a selfie out here in a little bit. All in person, all working together. We had the idea to put this show together a little while back because there are a lot of changes in the landscape right now, and I figured who better to discuss it than the three that are really navigating at the top end as well. So let's just start with lay of the land. Feel free to raise your hand, gentlemen. The introduction of, let's start with MLS Next 2, coming to market this fall. Who wants to give a quick breakdown, a little brief description of what it really means? Just the simplicity of, kind of parity in the relationship to the MLS Next Academy. Let's go. You know what? I'm going to choose. Yep, Jeff Davis, you're first.
It's been something that's, I think, been in the works for a bit here. So last year, the NAL was around, and I know Matty played in it with Fusz. So he and I have been kind of talking back and forth, and he's kind of guided me in that perspective of how the league went for them as a club. We were playing in the ECNL. We have been for the past 3 years, and it's gone well. So the MLS 2 is something that I think U.S. Soccer's taken a bit more of an interest in it. They've guided MLS. We're obviously in the academy, the MLS Next. I guess you say one. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, right.
So we felt as though this year we needed to align our club. And the making of MLS Next 2, and they're calling it new tier. Am I
new tier
hitting that correct? So the new tier came around, and basically NAL, since they were organized, they basically just dropped down into the next tier and took their organization and made it into MLS 2. What that did was put all of the second teams and clubs into that league. So as that happened, we felt as though we needed to get our club aligned, and that's where we preferred to have our teams, was in that particular league.
So let me jump over here to Dan next. I want to get your take on, when we look at other nations around the world. I'm going to go global on this, kind of teeing this up. You look at the FA in England, you look at the Bundesliga in Germany, et cetera. Everything is very vertical. Like, there are no other silos within those systems. They're triangle-based, in which you got the tip of the top, which is your first division, and then everything works down from there and all the way down to the youth level. This feels to me is like an attempt to at least start to move in that direction, given U.S. Soccer's involvement and encouragement, or, I don't know how deep they are actually physically involved in the process, but can you take a second and speak to how important it is for the youth landscape to get a little bit more guardrails put on these leagues?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's almost like purposely they look to do this to continue to change the landscape, right? So nobody can ever get comfortable. You never know what clubs are going to be on what platforms. For us, we were in a little bit of a different boat, right, than Scott Gallagher and Lou Fusz. We weren't at those top platforms. So for us as a club, we're just looking at what's the best interest, right, for our players, our coaches, and our families, and just continuing to progress to a platform that we feel is in our best interest as a club. And fortunately for me, I think it's awesome for our community now and in St. Louis that everybody has kind of been put in a similar pyramid, in a similar pathway, whether you're at the top of it or on your way up it. I look at it as though we're trying to progress taking baby steps on the way up to be comparable with a Scott Gallagher and a Lou Fusz. So for me, I think it puts everybody on the same pathway, hopefully. But only time will tell. I think you're going to have to watch it over the years to see if it continues to progress in this manner. And being under the umbrella of U.S. Soccer, as Jeff kind of mentioned, I think that's what we wanted to see as a club and what we wanted to be a part of. So we're just excited to be a part of it with these guys,
Yeah, I mean, it is really kind of it's a power trio, right? When you look at the three clubs and, because obviously you guys are doing it too, and as a parent with Academy Kid, we're all over this country looking at all these clubs, right? And when you think of regionally, LA's different. Take LA, take it out of the pile, Miami to a degree. Texas, Dallas, the bigger markets in Texas. Mm-hmm. But when you get into the meat and potatoes of soccer communities across this country, they don't have what we have, right? So, Matt, you guys are in a little bit of a unique situation as far as the three here at the table, because on the girls' side, you guys also were part of the GA, actually DA's GA as well. So, Dan, sorry about that.
Both in that,
DA's GA.
So GA was really, not that it flew under the radar, but on the girls' side, the relationship between MLS Next and GA, that was kind of publicized a number of months ago. Prior to the introduction of the 2 league. How does that play out in your world in kind of, being able to manage the girls program kind of under the same umbrella as the boys problem? Is that a competitive advantage? Is that, the showcases to travel, the other clubs, the infrastructure? Talk a little bit about the relationship of GA as it pertains to the boys side via MLS Next and 2.
Yeah, and Dan would be in the similar situation. I think for us with the GA MLS announcement, I think we're still kind of getting some clarity on what that relationship and partnership is going to look like. I think it's good for the GA to be aligned with MLS just in terms of operating the league and improving the league and recruiting talent to the league, different things like that. I think similar to what these guys had said, we're trying to align both our boys and our girls side. So from the boys side, what we just talked about in terms of having MLS Next and then MLS 2. On the girls' side, they have Girls Academy, and then they just announced their Girls Academy Aspire. So STLDA would be in the same boat where it's Girls Academy and then it's Girls Academy Aspire underneath it. So I would say, speaking from our standpoint, we're really now aligned on the boys and the girls' side.
Pull that a little closer.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's cool.
And I would say the same. Like and Jeff mentioned it on the outset. He's trying to align his club, right? And I think Lou Fusz has done the same thing, and we're following suit. So being under that same umbrella with the same frameworks and structure from a platform and league standpoint, I think makes sense.
Jeff, let's talk a little bit about maybe a combination of expectations, not only from players wanting that patch or parents wanting that title, but really, can you take a second and speak to the role or the expectations from a club perspective to expand your club into an organization like MLS Next, where you're expanding and adding teams, the clout that has nationally through showcases, etc. Maybe more of like a pseudo mission statement or an expectation as far as like, what do you want the club to get out of these expanded relationships within MLS Next?
Well, we pride ourselves in the brand, Scott Gallagher brand. It's one that's known, obviously, across the country. And we felt as though we've had, I can't tell you how many meetings on it, and we were at a crux where we had to make a decision, to be very blunt about it, as far as the ECNL versus Academy. And it was obviously unanimous as to which one we were going to pick. We felt as though our top teams belonged in the top platform, and that was the MLS Next. So as far as that goes, we just needed to align our entire club, and we do see where it's going to be, as I said earlier, and I probably didn't make any sense because I was talking about MLS Next 1, MLS 2. Well, if you look at it, though, now NAL's taken another step down, and I mean, I think it's only going to be a matter of time before there's an MLS Next 3, 4, 5. I do think U.S. Soccer is taking a big step towards that alignment that we've all begged for the last 20, 30 years. And I think U.S. Soccer's had a big piece of that. We're lucky to have some guys within our club that have some connections to the top of that food chain, and just Mike Sorber.
Yeah.
We are lucky to have those guys that can make those calls to find out what is U.S. Soccer's ideals. What are they? What's next? And we've heard nothing but those types of things where they're going to get involved in looking forward to the 2026 World Cup. How can we align with everything in the country aiming towards that?
Yeah, especially given the recent run of results.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we drink, parents. Okay, so
Did that answer your question?
No, I think it's, because here's the thing. I preface the question with the expectations that parents have, the expectations the players have, because every kid thinks they're going to be a pro.
Right.
And every parent thinks they're going to Indiana on a full ride.
You're not, and it's okay.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point. So I want to kind of how are you guys planning to kind of temper or manage, yes, you have a new patch on your sleeve. It says MLS Next, and that's got a correlation to Pro Pathway. But it's, there's a whole lot of percentages above a lot of these teams that are taking on that title. How do you plan on communicating out to, again, manage the expectations, but let these parents and kids know, look, here's the quality of this league is X, Y, and Z, and this is what we're really trying to get out of it. How about, Matt, you first? Fusz's approach to managing expectations with the bump in quote status.
Yeah, I think we really try to focus on experience. I think we know our place in the market in terms of where we stand as a club, and I think what we constantly talk about in our staff meetings, I'm sure these guys talk the same as well, is what kind of experience can we provide for our kids? So if it's the kid that's really ambitious and wants to play MLS Next, great, we'll play, want to play there. If it's a kid that wants to play high school soccer, that's awesome. We have an opportunity for you. If it's a girl, similar situation. So I think when we sit and talk about it, we try to look at just the things that we can provide from a coaching standpoint, creating a high level environment. The patch matters. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the parents love the patch, but I think it's also trying to educate parents on this is where your child is, this is where your child can fit, and what can we provide as a club that is a fit for you, for your child.
Dan, do you, because you sit in a unique catbird seat with kind of your recruiting, evaluation, skill sets.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, exactly.
You're old.
That's right. That's right.
What I want to have you address or talk about a little bit is parents hear terms like profile or rating or the kid is a rated player, etc. Can you take a second and just kind of put to rest or let them know that those are things they should not be caring about, and why? When it comes to evaluating kids, because a lot of people are going to think that these new programs are going to elevate their potential to be one of those players. Can you talk about the reality of the landscape in finding those players?
Yeah, I think you have to look everywhere, right? Just like a college coach, you're not just going to take from MLS Next Academy. You're going to find some ECNL players. You're going to find kids on all platforms. And, kids have choices now. I think Matt kind of alluded to it in his last statement where, obviously, if you're going to chase that top platform, you're going to go to Gallagher or Lou Fusz's MLS Next Academy. If you're not at City yet, right? So then now there's more choices. If they want to play high school, they can drop down to their MLS 2 teams. They can also come over to our MLS 2 team. So for us, it's just more choices for these people in town. And if we're not looking everywhere for talented players, then we're not doing our job from a U.S. soccer standpoint and from a club standpoint, right? This just kind of is going to make things much more competitive a little bit on the MLS 2 platforms. But at the same time, we've always been competitive. But at the same time, from my perspective, I don't look at these guys as competitive in nature. I just look at it's another great club in town that we have to compete against. And I love that. It's just, what kind of mentality are you going to have as a club director? And what kind of mentality, back to your question, what kind of mentality are you going to have as a parent? Are you just going to strive to put your kid in MLS Next because that's where the highest percentage of players go on to that next level? Or are you going to find what in the proper definition is the best fit for my son or my daughter? And I think the more people that do that will understand that there's just not one path to the next opportunity.
Yeah, let's.
And that's the sad reality is that's what people think. They chase those top platforms, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And then there's the reality of let's talk about the elephant in the room in the marketplace, and that is STL City. In the academy over there, and Jeff, I'm going to go to you on this one. And the reason is, let me back up. I'm just going to give you my own personal opinion, a really quick soapbox, less than a minute here, is that, prior to City entering into the market, we were a 1A, a 1B, a number 2, a 3 kind of a city. When you look at the clubs, there was hierarchy, but the delta was fairly close, right? There was consistency. I mean, look, everybody at this table knows, Gallagher predominantly historically, has had the results. Fusz definitely has been accumulating a lot of trophies in the recent years, and then there's other clubs like DA and even recently Stars and Rush that are starting to win certain things, but there was a hierarchy, and then in comes St. Louis City Academy. And all of those kind of expectations, well, now there's a clear-cut delta. There's a number 1, and then it goes, down to 2, 3, 4. Now, anything can happen in a given game, right? Any given Sunday, but can you take a second and just speak to what that really means when it comes to those quote 1% players? With City, because every single year, the next age group is there's going to be a sweep across clubs, and it's been weighted heavily. Gallagher gets cut first, then Fusz, and then DA, and so on. Take a second and speak to what City and market really means to these clubs, for parents to understand that there's 2 deltas.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, one, you just kind of hit on it. We get, I would say, in the nicest way possible, purged.
I saw that movie. That's not nice.
I said as nice as possible. So you're taking the 1% of 1%, because that's not even the 1%. The kids, when you look at it, and I think these guys would agree, on that piece, that how many come out of that academy and go play for their first team? 1 every 5 years, 10 years. I mean, it's very, very few even at that mark. So now you're taking, we've lost 20 to 30 to 40 kids every year. And these guys have lost 10, 20, whatever, number that is as well. So now that's the 1% of 1%. And then you have the delta. Then it's back to what's next. And that number is just getting so hard to even look at as far as, talent. It's getting harder to evaluate what is a pro, much less what is an academy player. That's getting to be very, very difficult for, I believe, us sitting here at the table, because we're not getting necessarily, and this is not a shot at anybody, this is just the level of play that we're looking at, because we're not seeing the same level week to week, day to day. What is an academy player? What is a next level player? And
Yeah.
Where do those guys all fit?
And can we put a squash to the theory, the nonsense, as far as like, and any one of you can jump in, the role that, quote, politics plays in the player selection? Because sitting in the pseudo...
I don't think anybody sitting at this table wants to lose.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
You know, and you know the idea that somebody is you know, a sponsor somewhere in town and their kid gets to go play at City is just a fallacy. And then even within the clubs, you know, the relationship because somebody played with somebody in high school 30 years ago that their kid is going to be on the academy team. Anybody want to like take a stab at that as to how foolish that is? Matt, you look like you're excited.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, and I would say Dan probably can speak to this because he does scouting with U.S. Soccer. I mean, I think it's become challenging to really, to Jeff's point, really identify that upper level tier of player. I think it does come down to as well. I'd be interested in these guys' thoughts, what the academy decides to do. So City seems to have their academy set up that they're going to pull from St. Louis and pull St. Louis talent. They don't really have a stay-at-home program. I think other MLS academies have done differently. You know, we had a couple kids go up to Cincinnati that did some training with their academy. So like I think it's by market, but this market seems to be going that route of the pull of St. Louis kids from, you know, our three clubs and other clubs. So
yeah, well, Dan, I think you would agree because I had this conversation this past weekend. I was in Columbus for the academy games talking to a dad from the Crew. His son plays for the Columbus Crew 18 academies. He's been there. He's been in the system. He's up and down with the 2 team. He's not from Columbus. He's not from anywhere in Ohio. He's from upstate Michigan. And 85%, 90% of the kids on that academy are from out of market. Cincinnati's no different. Our friends on the other side of the state, and friends in quotes, you know.
I forgot how much you love Sporting KC.
Yeah, they are not recruiting from their backyard because that backyard is shallow. I mean, do you think this is both a bonus and a curse? You know, given the volume of talent that we have here, because then we are forced to kind of, the academy city has to decide. Are we going to grow from within because we do have that depth of talent, or do we go to find these gaps nationally, even though we don't have residency? And then you guys are kind of left like, you know, in any other market other than the big ones, that's a problem. It's not really a problem here. Thoughts?
What's not a problem?
Finding quality players.
No, there's. I mean, for City.
Yeah, because again, the compare and contrast would be like if you're Columbus. Look, that's a great college football town, but that is not a hotbed for youth soccer.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, but again, I would say, and I'm not, you know, unless you're in those offices every day, you know, this is just a not an invalid opinion to be fair to the people at City, but you got to create the best environment, and if you're just going to create it on the homegrown talent, then that's what you're going to put your eggs in that basket. Columbus, whether they have the number of talented kids that St. Louis has, regardless, they're pulling kids from all over the country. So was Philly. So was Real Salt Lake. So was a lot of those teams. Like LA might be the exception, like to what like St. Louis is doing.
Big cities. That's the difference. You have LA, Dallas, New York.
We're pulling all those homegrown kids.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, Miami just keeps on pumping out Messi kids.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
He's got a
Santi Morales. You're right. So again, it's like, well, you know, what is their agenda? And look, we're not in those offices on a daily basis. So to be honest and to be fair, I really can't speak to it as to what their development plan or pathway is.
Well, let me kind of qualify. What I really meant, and maybe this is for anybody to speak up, is the benefit that you guys have by being, you know, for Fusz and Gallagher in particular, you are at the MLS Next Academy. You have, quote, first division. Now everybody has 2 as well. The ability to fill those and still be competitive or still be respectful is a unique advantage here compared to the rest. And the reason why I was going this route is I want parents to know that, you know, wherever your kid falls, if they're anywhere within that spectrum, and most importantly, if they're having a good experience, that's a win. Because the true 1%ers within our market, look, there's no politics. If they're good enough, they're going up. And there's not a limit to which club they're going to be at other than their own personal decision. Takers? Haters?
I agree.
You concur?
I would agree. I would concur. They're whether you agree with the choices that they make, that is a totally different thing. We can all nitpick at who they pick. There's just no politics involved in that.
That's a great segue. We're going to take a quick break because when we come back, what I'd like to talk about is a little bit, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, the whole idea of profile or a rated player. I want to get into breaking that down because a lot of times really, really good players are not a fit for certain systems, and that's where a market like ours does have additional benefits to players because you got options. Yeah. And the other thing I want to talk about is specifically with the 2-level, the ability for the kids in St. Louis in particular to enjoy our favorite pastime, which is high school soccer.
Oh, I thought you were going to say St. Louis Blues hockey.
Cardinals baseball.
Cardinals baseball.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about more changes in the landscape. We're out of here with little David Bowie. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Quick break. Reset. You guys like this one?
I do.
When you hear this, you think just Sweet Meat, KC,
KC 95.
roll the windows down.
Take the T-tops off.
Yeah, T-tops.
I think high school.
Yeah, high school.
Absolutely.
I think about grade school, Dan.
I know, that's why I said
I was probably coming out of Mr. Miller's class at CBC.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, hilarious. All right, we're back. We're going to be, as I mentioned before the break, wanted to jump in a couple other topics. The one thing that I would like to take a second and talk about is, I alluded to it, the high school soccer. MLS 2 is designed to be flexible on that front. I mean, just get right down to brass tacks. Matt, you're shaking your head vociferously, which is heavily, people. How important is the ability for players within your program to be able to do that, to experience high school as well as play at the club?
Well, I'm kind of partial because I had a great high school experience. JD knows my dad at CBC.
I had his dad, so
Yeah.
I have to be really nice to Mr. Miller. He's an awesome human being.
But my dad was a guidance counselor there for years. So, and
He
I
never saw
experienced-
me, I swear.
Oh, you never
Yeah.
saw me, yeah.
He just bailed him out.
Just bailed him out. But I grew up in that environment my whole life since I was 5 years old around Terry Mickler and my dad and all that. So that carries a special place in my heart. So that's why I'm nodding my head. I do like high school soccer. I think there's a place for high school soccer within the club ecosystem. Kind of going back to what I had said, it's comes back to like what the player wants, and what the player is looking for. And so that's what we really like about MLS 2 is that it gives that ability to let that level of player play high school and then come back and compete in a high platform.
So MLS 2 across the country as a league, the reality is a lot of other soccer markets either A, don't value high school soccer, or B, have it in other seasons, be it winter season in the warmer states. There's some states that it's spring sport. Do you see a future where that becomes an issue as these clubs grow, as the leagues grow? Because the desire to, let's just call spade a spade. If you have a 10-month league, you can charge more than if you have a 6-month league or a 7-month league. That's just simple mathematics. Could you see a day where nationally, these platforms are year-round?
Not completely, because I think if you take 0 from 0, you still get 0. Because if we were missing out, and I think what MLS saw is we were missing out on a whole lot of kids regardless. They looked at the ECNL and said, okay, that's a player pool. All they're looking for is a player pool, and the more kids we can get into that pool, the better off we are.
Which takes us full circle to what we were talking about a little bit earlier as far as like rating players and how, the lack of politics, et cetera. If a kid is really, really good enough and really, really wants it, if they are the best high school soccer player in the area, there's a good chance they're not playing high school soccer the next season. They're going to elevate up the ladder unless they so choose.
Right. Well, you see a lot of the kids that are coming out of, and I say coming out of, either by choice or by city's choice, that don't fit their style, or again, they choose to maybe drop out and play their high school senior year, because it is, especially in St. Louis, it's a massive part of our culture. It's a big part of our fabric. There's kids that are dropping out and they're choosing to play, choosing to play high school soccer. So there's some really good players that still have a pro pathway, let's say. You look at a kid like Lou Poncerola, he's going to St. Louis U.
Yeah.
He's a very, very good player. I would never count that kid out and say there's no chance he's ever going to play pro. I'm not saying he's gonna, but I'm saying he's a kid that's got some profile to him.
Yeah, so Dan, maybe this is a really good question for you, kind of given, again, the recruiting role that you play. In your opinion, these kids that do go play high school soccer, when they step away from a club, let's say that, they got a really quality club coach, they're on, what would have been or is the ECNL level now is going to be MLS 2. They're doing both, for example, at Gallagher, the 19s have Brad Davis coaching that team, and the rest of the staff. And these kids they're really, really good. But high school soccer provides players a different experience, a different set of skills that they need to thrive in that environment. And I kind of want to tie this to the top of the pile, our national team. This is one of the debates that is so prevalent everywhere. Are we overdeveloping and under creating competitors? High school soccer is 1,000% about the competition, at least in our market, right?
In the right high schools, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are high schools.
There's 10 or 12 kids over at SLU High who won a state championship this year, and they didn't even have those kids. Right? Can you imagine if they had? That's a full starting lineup of players that are just walking the hallways and not able to play high school soccer.
Yeah, you're talking about the kids that are at academy and couldn't play at SLU High.
Yeah, they're at City,
correct.
And they're not permitted to play high school. So, but again, I think there's pros and cons to every situation like that, right? Because that's the big thing. And St. Louis is unique. Like, I've been Jersey, I've been around the country and seen the high school atmospheres, and there's nothing better than St. Louis high school soccer and the competitive nature and the talent pool of high school players here. But it's, I think you're going to see more and more kids probably opt to play high school, realizing that there's still a pathway if you choose to play high school. And again, like with the MLS 2, I think that, whether they were an academy player or whatever, they're going to have choice now. And maybe they drop from your MLS Next academy teams at Lou, Fusz, or Gallagher and go on to your MLS 2 team and just take that high school experience because they've missed it or they really love it and they want it. And maybe they're paying for their high school experience for that reason.
Yeah.
So I think it's all pros and cons, but a player can be developed in the right environment. That's it. So if your kid wants to play high school and it's a good competitive high school, like there are a lot of them here in St. Louis, and then go join his MLS Academy team or MLS 2 team, you're going to have that prerogative now, and I think that's a great thing for these kids.
Matt, take a second and address because inevitably within the high school marketplace, and we know these people, there's a camp that is anti-club because you guys are unfair. You're not letting them play club. I'm going to give you the fun high school versus club question here. But I think based on the previous two answers, I think I know where you're going to go with this, but take a second and speak to the narrative that is coming out of anti-club camps, i.e. the pro high school only camps. What's your take on the relationship between the two and the lack thereof of like a nefarious intention by the clubs?
Yeah, I would, and again, I don't want to speak for Dan or Jeff here, but I think that we are all in the same boat in terms of what experience we can provide to the player. And so I think, again, we now have a runway, all three of us, us as clubs, to give that option to whatever type of player we have within our club. Like Jeff said, with like pools, there might be a kid that's in the MLS Next pool that wants to go and be a pro, thinks he's going to be a pro. Mom and dad are telling me he's going to be a pro. It's not going to happen.
You mean their tuition bill at your club isn't enough to make them pro?
They think they think it is.
Just kidding.
But then down to the player that gets to play high school, and there's value in high school soccer. I believe that. I lived it. The social aspect of it, being around your classmates, playing in front of your classmates. I remember when I was at CBC, walking with your jersey on game day. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with that. And I think there's a way for us as clubs to work within that environment while also providing whatever we provide, you know?
So I alluded to it a little earlier, just a second ago. I was talking about kind of the debate that's occurring at the top team, first team level, the development versus competition, et cetera. Let's just put it in your camp, just kind of the viewpoint. Jeff, you first maybe, because obviously developing players is what you guys are really, really known for. You've pumped out a lot of great players, but you also are very, there's a lot of trophies in the case too. Mm-hmm. In today's environment where the demand from the parent is always the next level, the next level, the next level, how do you kind of approach balancing the need to compete, the will and want to win versus, isolating players from a development standpoint? What does that blend look like in your opinion?
It's different, obviously much different with, you're peeling away the top layer every year from a number of age groups. So it's been hard from a coaching standpoint, I would say, of having our coaches understand that your job is a development piece. Don't forget that. These are kids, and you're doing your job if you're moving them on. I mean, that's really, and I know it's cliche as all get out, but have some pride in the fact that we do have a lot of these kids down at City. That should be your number one goal, is to move them on. We have been known, on the flip side of that, we have been known for winning national titles, and just like anything else in the city, you hear about it from the people that have played here in the past, and it's, we haven't won this since, I always go back, Nam.
But but speak to, I mean, it's gotten a lot harder. Because of the reality of the haircut, off the top of the talent that's going to the City Academy, and then obviously the elevation
of the game.
Of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we off mic, we were talking about a club from Nebraska, and like, in my head, I'm like, they play soccer there?
Right. It's even hard for our own staff. I mean, tell Tritt about that, and he laughs. And I'm like, no, Tritt, there's actually really good teams there.
Yeah, but Tritt's from Granite City, man. I fully expect him to think that. Yeah, Dan, to you, maybe take a second and kind of, given your travels and everything that you're seeing out there, talk about how big of a deal it is for people to understand here in our market that are used to hearing about the glory days from Kudus to Bush to Gallagher to, hell, even recently, your guys' national championships over at Fusz as well. But talk about what you're seeing on the ground as far as the overall quality of play from every corner of our map.
I think the numbers are higher than they've been before. But for me, the special players are still the special players, but there's a higher number of good players that are out there. I want to go back a little bit to what those guys were just talking about, and it's like, how do you judge yourself as a club, right? Yeah, you want national championships, you want regional championships, and Girls Academy national championships, and ECNL national championships, and that is, you can't bat an eye at that. That's unbelievable. But also pushing kids out to that next opportunity, like Jeff mentioned before. All three of our clubs have pushed girls out to top Power 5 conferences, and on the boys' side, their numbers might be higher than let's say St. Louis Development Academy, but we also have kids that have come back from City, back to our club, and are D1 players, and they're legitimate. So that's what we kind of pride ourselves in. We look at the development piece at the end of the day, and that's what's most important to us. So as long as we can hold our head up and say, look, we may not be as big, or we might not have the number of national championships. I mean, we've had teams there, but we haven't won a national championship per se. I think before I got here, they might have won a national championship. I don't even know. I wasn't here.
Right.
But I just think, again, the talent pool is here for sure. And it's all over. There's talent pool at City. There's talent pool at Gallagher, at Lou Fusz, on their top teams, their second teams, their third teams. Like, it's incredible where these kids can, if you have the right development program in place, which I think all three of us here at the table have in place, you're going to produce players.
Let's talk about the expectation of pathway. We've alluded to the reality of City coming in, especially, exclusively on the boys' side, taking multitudes of players every single year. You still have a lot of really, really good players. You just talked about Luke a second ago that's playing on Brad's ECNL team, who is slated to go to SLU. Both of you, in particular on the girls' side, it's almost weekly in which the clubs are putting out a picture of a girl that's going to a power conference school to play Division I soccer. Take a second and talk about the process or the expectation within your clubs to focus on that component of this pathway, because that is the thing where most parents, especially once you get past junior high age, when they start paying the money and the kids are playing at these elevated levels, whether they admit it or not, there's a certain amount of expectation as to, quote, ROI on where the kid goes next. How do you guys manage that? Let's start with you first, Jeff, on the Gallagher side. And then you two can steal parts of his answer.
Okay.
I will say it is getting incredibly more difficult for people to manage their expectations. We have this conversation, I would say, twice a week, where you have a player fill out their expectation sheet where it's, where do you want to go to school? Give me your top 5. And they'll come back with Duke, North Carolina, Stanford, blah, 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 blah.
UConn.
Yeah. Nobody wants to go there.
There's no easy way to get there. Just go east.
Yes, and look for the giant cold spot on the map.
Yeah.
So you get those 5 schools, and you have to kind of walk them through, okay, that's not attainable. I mean, you have to be brutally honest. You have to have a tough conversation with them. And especially with the environment of the Division I, if you look at the top 15, top 20 schools in the country, most of them right now, and I think these guys will attest to it, are maybe a bit more flavored to the foreign side, and they're much more flavored to 22, 23, and now you have the portal. So it's a bit more difficult for a freshman to come in and find minutes. We have been trying to find a solution to that where it's, hey, there's nothing wrong with going to a Division II, prove yourself, get in the portal. Division III, maybe it's JUCO route for you for 1 year. It's not the end of the world. NAI, take your money, get what you need to get, and then try to find yourself into one of those Division I. And it's so much harder on the boys' side right now. And I'm speaking, I don't know the girls' side as well as you all do, but it's just so much harder to get into these schools that these boys and their parents want them to get into. And it's just managing those expectations of what you can and where you want.
Yeah, the fundamental difference between the girls and the boys' side, I've read a lot on this, and the numbers don't lie. The reality is, on the women's side, U.S. is a world power.
Right.
On the men's side, we are not. So when you look at those, those players, and NCAA's lack of guardrails as far as age limitations or previous status, et cetera, is thrown out the window. So it really is an unfair advantage. And
right.
I do think that the potential of the new Super League, right? ACC, Big Ten, if they pull that off, there's things that are occurring that could really change the landscape. Right. But moral of the story is, for the purpose of our conversation, maybe Matt, if you want to take a second and add to this, the role of the club, the role of Lou Fusz, when you have a kid that's coming in at that 14, 15 age bracket, and now you start to look at, okay, we're evaluating just academy, or we're looking at now academy plus high school, and what's your goal? Okay, you want to go to the next level? Fine. How important is it to get to self-realization as to the level, and what's your role in managing that?
Yeah. Well, we actually did our DOC course. That was, how many years ago was that?
A lot.
It felt like a lot. It felt like forever ago. All of us here are director of coaching, and when I was listening to Jeff talk, it made me think like that it's our job to provide good coaches to these kids that are honest, and staff that are honest, that can really tailor these expectations. We all provide an experience for each individual club, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the coaches that are around the players and what experience they can provide. I'm sure these guys could tell you stories. Like I can tell you stories about coaches that just don't work out. Danny and I have had conversations about this. So that's where I think for us at Lou Fusz, what we've been trying to do a lot of is really try to improve our coaching education side, which I'm sure these guys are doing the same thing, and really trying to find good coaches that do a good job, create a high level environment, are organized, run good training sessions, and to Jeff's point, provide candid feedback, like, you know what, this is probably where you fit, you know?
Yeah.
And boys is definitely different than girls. I'll touch on that as well. I think a lot of our girls, we've been fortunate enough, they get good exposure like STLDA at the Girls Academy showcases. And there's a lot of college coaches that come out, and that's obviously a big piece of it. And that helps us out in terms of how we recruit and push kids out. So,
Dan, let's take a second, though, and let's talk about the kid that's going through this process because, there's a lot of factors. There's the obvious one in which the kid plays. Coaches and scouts watch them play, and they're like, we like how he plays. We want to recruit them. But take a second because you and I both have a sophomore, right, in high school. They were both approaching that magical June 15th date, which is becoming diminished by the minute. Yep. Take a second and talk about the responsibility of the kid for the players and what they need to be doing in this process, because a lot of times parents are oblivious to the reality. They think that if they just get them to training, they pay the dues, they go to these showcases, that, natural progression, the eyeballs are going to find them and they're going to get their offers. That's not how this thing works. Take a second and from your own opinion, talk about the responsibility of the kid, some of the things they need to be doing from email to prep, et cetera.
They need to be doing more recruiting than the college coaches, right? So they need to go out there and being proactive and sending emails and sending whatever they can to get on the radar, right? Because your kid goes to a showcase and there's 100 coaches there, and you wait at June 15th and the phone doesn't ring. Like, well, there was like 100 coaches that had his games over the showcase or whatever. It's like,
and 2,999
there's about 50,000 kids that are just as good, if not better, than your son. And to Jeff's point, it's like people are like, hey, can you help us through this process? Yeah, sure. What about this school? This is where I think he would fit in, whether it's a Patriot League school or whatever. It's like, well, is that D1? So right away where their mindset is, right? It's like, who cares if it's D1? Just find an opportunity for your kid. So for me, and I'll be very transparent here, it's like I've been in college coaching for over 23, 24 years or whatever. I am seriously concerned about this process and what it's going to look like for my son, right? Because there's only so many programs out there. As Jeff and Matt both alluded to, there's international influx of players on the men's side, on the boys' side. There's transfer portal. There's guys that are taking gap years. There's kids that are maybe going to choose to play in the USL and take another year or year and a half and then go. So now you're fighting against all these men as a true freshman coming out of high school. So it's a tough process. I have a lot of concern about these kids that are coming out of high school that are just sitting back waiting for things to happen for them. It's not going to happen. You have to be proactive, and I tell it to them blue in the face to people, and still I'll ask my son or I'll ask some of our players, like, hey, who have you reached out to this week? Well, I'm still working on my highlight video. I'm like, well, you keep working on that, and you'll be graduated by the time that highlight video is done.
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm nervous for all these kids, to be honest, and there's only so much financial assistance to go around now. It's going to be tough. It's a really tough landscape right now.
Didn't they lower the rosters too?
Yeah,
that being lowered as well.
Yeah. Yep.
The amount of kids.
Yep. And look, again, I have a different feeling on that. Like when I was coaching college, I'd have a roster of 32 kids, let's say. Maybe there's 3 or 4 goalkeepers. I could get down to 28 within a year's time, no problem. These coaches are using that as a crutch to say, well, I only got so many roster spots. I'm like, well, then get rid of the walk-ons that you have, because that's not the guys that you want are going to help you win games, and that's going to keep your job. So, again, I'm just being transparent. But there's limited options.
It really is a triple whammy when you zoom out and you look at it, because you do have obviously the international players that are just coming in, and look, they're good. They are good players. Yep. Then the portal has become the wild, wild west. So for those that are either disloyal, unhappy, to pick your adjective, they're going to move around, and they're older.
And the internationals, correct me, aren't they free in a lot of cases?
Yeah, for a lot of schools that do have international grants. For
First government students will come in and pick up 75%.
That's a
massive one.
So you have those two things occurring. But then to your point, Matt, you talked about the roster cut. Yes, there are a lot of walk-ons on there, but there are a lot of schools. There's one in the Big Ten that's not that far away. Would typically carry 40 or 42 on their roster. Okay, so if you cut, let's say it's 40, there's 12. If half of them just stay at the school because they really wanted to go to that school, great. But those other 6, if they were good enough to make the practice squad at this program, they're pretty good. There's other schools, so there's a trickle-down effect, right?
Right.
Which is squeezing out the room. And the moral of the story for all of you parents that are crying in your car right now in pickup line, don't worry, D2 is cute too. And I don't mean that tongue-in-cheek. I mean that legitimately.
No,
I mean, this is where the kids becoming self-aware, as to, maybe one of the metrics.
Look back in the day, Flow Valley was unbelievable. And this is all at one time. Flow Valley was unbelievable. UMSL was unbelievable. SLU was unbelievable. SIU was we played each other all the time, and every game was really, really good. I didn't hear anybody bitching about it back then.
No.
What's the difference, in my opinion? Yes, they may not be the same programs now, and that's not what
Flow was all the kids that just couldn't get into SLU that were just as good.
Correct.
And they didn't have the grades.
Correct. If Mizzou would have had a team back then, we always talk about it.
Oh my God,
it would have been the best team in the world.
So let's move. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's just kind of pan out. Let's look at the bigger picture. U.S. soccer in general. We've talked about how it appears that they're trying to get involved. To create a little bit more of a vertical relationship. Theoretically, it should be a cleaner pathway for those kids that do deserve to be, or at least in the pool of the quote top. Do you think it's going to get us where we want to go? Maybe you, Dan, first. Because the national team, on paper, everybody's talking about this is the greatest generation ever. They're playing at Milan, and they're in EPL, and they're in first teams in Bundesliga across the board. I mean, legitimately on paper, you cannot deny the reality of the stat, the team stat, but they are not winning. Do these kind of things that are occurring at the youth level, at the academy youth level, do you see these as net benefits for the bigger picture?
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to answer this question directly, but just putting my U.S. soccer hat on, it's with the introduction of MLS 2 and these kids now being able to go to those same showcases that the MLS Next Academy kids are going to is certainly going to expand that pool of kids that can get on the radar.
How about this? Let me take you out of the realm of potentially saying something that gets you in trouble. Let's talk about MLS. Does it?
I don't know who I'm getting in trouble with. It's a daily occurrence.
MLS, our league, because right now, if we zoom out, we look at MLS versus. We can't compare it against the EPL, can't compare it against Bundesliga, et cetera, because there's just so much more money. But if this improves, do we see a better league in 5 years, 7 years' time? Because if we are squeezing the true right kids in, do we start to see a little bit of a ratio shift in the rosters within MLS with better produced kids?
I guess I hope so. I don't really know the answer to that question, to be very fair and honest. But yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I mean, I'd like to think that, again, getting aligned is going to help that process, but I truly don't know. I mean, I always want to give things time before I make an answer like that.
Well, that's a boring answer.
I know. I didn't want to get in trouble. I avoided that.
So then let me pop this over to the two of you. Just, again, we've talked about a lot of things today. When you do kind of sit back at the end of the day, pour yourself a bourbon and you think about all the great you're doing.
Just give him 4 more beers and start talking. I can't shut him up.
The new format, kind of the little bit of clarity, a little bit of a better kind of a landscape, at least a mapped landscape. Does this make your job easier or harder? Let me just start there.
Oh, wow.
I think the vertical structure that you talked about, I do think that is going to help in a lot of ways in terms of just getting the country a little bit more organized in regards to understanding a clear pathway. I think there's a lot of leagues in this country. We've talked about them today. And I think the more that you can align things and have it, quote unquote, funnel into a certain area, I do think that helps. I think to Dan's point, time will tell. We could sit and talk for hours about the state of U.S. soccer and where we think it needs to go. That would be that'd be part two. And I have my own thoughts there. But I think it will help.
Let them know. I don't want to be the only one in trouble.
Yeah, I don't edit, by the way. So Jeff, what about you, man? Just like
I think it made my job incredibly less hard. I was in, just to be open, we were in MLS Next, which is one carding system, ECNL, another U.S. What is it?
That's U.S. Club side.
U.S. Club. Yeah. Then we were back in Slicer, which is USY. I mean, just all that carding alone, then it's scheduling. Now we're under one, and being able to call these guys and make a schedule, just all that little stuff makes everything so much easier for us. That's part of like the
operational there. Jeff.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that. Operationally, it is going to be a help.
It's just so much easier from that capacity. But then when you look outward, just the way we do things across the country, yes. I mean, just all of it. I hope that it does work out.
So let's take a second then, and we can wrap up with this kind of concept/question. The way that MLS2 is broken up, it's all kind of regional leagues, and within our backyard, there's really kind of two. There's the Heartland League, which is East and a West, right?
Yeah, it's Kansas City, basically Kansas City, St. Louis, and then we have bottom of Nebraska for one team.
That's one side, and the other side is kind of Illinois over into Indianapolis for the other part of Heartland. Is that correct?
Well, that's a Great Lakes. We've got Great Lakes, and it goes. There's 20 teams in that one. It's Michigan, Chicago. There's 9 teams in Michigan, Chicago. Indy 11, so over into Indy, a little bit of Ohio.
Okay. So what do you see kind of maybe a return to, because now you have all 3 clubs that are going to realistically be within these same divisions. Not that you haven't been playing each other in the past, but it's been, in my opinion, probably a little bit more sporadic than I would like to see, because I believe that these kind of rivalries, this is what made us great in the past. You know, being able to take all the heavyweights and say go toe-to-toe over and over again, right? Do you see maybe a fringe benefit of this whole realignment being, okay, if we are all going to talk, if we're going to let our, not you guys personally, but your parents talk shit on each other, how fun is it to now, you know, your quote, home and aways all the time, you know, year round? How important is that to you guys?
Yeah, I think parents complain a lot about traveling all over the place to play games when you got games in your backyard. So I think now that you can get games in your backyard against quality clubs and get good games on the weekend, yeah, I think it's a really good thing.
I think we all complained that we would go to Kansas City for a tournament and end up playing a St. Louis team in the final.
Right.
Like, why are we doing that? Let's take this back to St. Louis on a Monday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
Dan, closing thoughts? What you got for me, man?
No, I'm just excited. I mean, you know, like you kind of made a joke about us 3 sitting here at the table, but, you know, I'm amazed that even across the country, everywhere we go, like there's no collaboration amongst the clubs and stuff like that. And I think it separates us all. And, you know, I guess I'm just you know, because of my history here and the relationships I've built with JD and with Maddie over time, it allows us to work together. Even though we're competitors, we still are able to work together. And I think a lot of people need to understand and realize that, you know, it's not a fight. It's just an effort to give our kids the best opportunity down the road. So for me, from my perspective, that's what this conversation was all about today. So I appreciate the opportunity just to be here with these guys.
Man, look at this guy closing us out on a hug and a handshake.
Well said.
That's
there.
my jersey.
The mayor of
my jersey friendly attitude.
We're gonna walk out here.
The jersey.
Yeah, we're gonna walk out here, and he's gonna catch us in the alleyway over here and beat us up.
He's gonna
Careful
shake
walk
us.
across the street.
Yeah, he's like, you ever watch Sopranos? And he's going to shank us. Gentlemen, Dan Donigan from STLDA, Matt Mueller from the Lou Fusz, and Mr. Jeff Davis, St. Louis Scott Gallagher. Appreciate you guys joining me today.
This was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Much.
This was great.
Yeah, so hopefully this cuts down on a few of those angry phone calls for you. You know, just this is.
I think
this
those
is
will still be.
This
They'll
is a,
always be there.
They'll always be there.
We probably hold on. Let me check my phone.
Yeah, here they
Look
go.
at my phone for an hour and a half.
All right, here we go. Soccer Dad Pod, thanks for joining us. Like, review, follow, share. Like I said, send this to a friend. Send it to that fellow soccer parent in need that needs to be walked off the ledge. We just gave you guys some juicy nuggets there. Appreciate you listening. I'll have links to all 3 clubs in the show notes. Go check it out. If you got the next little messy, call me first. I'll be the agent. And we'll catch you next time. See ya.